Brother, I love the beard.
Say again?
I love the beard.
I think I should probably shave it, honestly. I look around like college, right? And I see so many people that just look like hobos, like with just terrible unkept beards. I feel like that's me, and I just don't realize it.
No, you don't look like you have a terribly unkept beard. You look like your name is Muhammad Azam al-Khadim. Just so everybody knows, me and this guy have known each other for what, 6-7 years? Something?
I showed up to the unit in 2011, so yeah, 6 years.
6 years?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Long world. Wow, you're not wearing the
Oh my
shirt.
God, you're wearing your Rakuten shirt?
Yeah.
Give me 2 seconds. No, I wish I would have done. I wish I would have thought of that.
Yeah,
I don't even know where it is, or else I'd go put it on.
You disappoint me.
Somewhere in my closet.
All right, it's good to see you, by the way. But let's.
Yeah, of course. So as we talked about before, we can spend a couple of minutes just defining terms, so we make sure we're talking about the same stuff.
That's fine. Go for it.
Okay, so I'll offer up my definition of rights first. And what I have is a right is a liberty, be a positive or negative liberty that is given a higher priority in society.
Okay. You want me to give my definition?
Sure.
I'm going to reject that definition because that implies positive and negative externalities involved with it. So what I offer is the definition: right is a justified claim on others. Very simple, very, very poignant. And the justification is really where the rubber hits the road for this. For this
on
thing.
others?
Yes, a justified claim on others.
So I think of something, super normative, like the right to freedom of speech. How is that a claim upon others?
Right. So what that means is so you can't make a claim upon others, right? So a justified claim on others. I have the right to have you not infringe on my freedom of speech.
Okay. And it has to be justified. That was part of your definition.
Yes,
okay. No, I don't think we're too far off. So yeah, I can work in that space for sure. Now, natural rights, and I'm not going to offer up a definition of this because obviously I don't think that they exist. So I'm gonna leave that to you.
Well, for that, I don't see a difference between a right and a natural right. So I'm going to state that because I don't believe in positive rights. So anything that's a positive right does not exist as a natural right, and a negative right is a natural right because it's justified in the definition for a right itself.
So by positive right, I mean positive liberty, yeah?
Right. Positive means you infringe upon me.
Oh, okay. So when I refer to positive liberty, I don't mean, something that I do to you. I mean it in the sense of being closer to one's true self. So like alcohol addiction would be an infringement upon positive liberty. I think the Fourth Amendment is an example of a guarantee of positive liberty. Have you heard of that or no?
No, I agree, but
yeah.
The fundamental point I want to point out is positive rights require others to provide you with either a good or service.
So you would just do away with the Fourth Amendment, for example. You don't think that's warranted or justified?
It's not justified as a natural right.
As a natural right. Okay, fair enough.
It is justified as a right under the Constitution, and that I do agree with.
Okay. All right. So hold on. Let me pull up my timer real fast. Do you want to go first with your opening statement?
Oh no, please, you go ahead.
Do you got a timer?
It's you can go now.
Okay.
It's 11. It's 10.
Okay. All right. So what got me thinking about this topic is a bill that was kicked around the Tennessee legislature that wanted a congressional declaration stating that our rights stem from God, and that was the phrasing that they used was God, and this got me kicking around this question in my head. Where do our rights come from? And I reject that notion that they come from God, and I want to be clear about what I mean when I say that they come from God. It's a very specific God that they're referring to. It's not the God of Spinoza or Zeus or what have you. It's an interventionist God, and it's an interventionist God that has some theology of granting us these rights. And I want to say that yes, the founding fathers did invoke natural rights in the Declaration of Independence. Obviously, I disagree with that. I almost hate to say this, but I feel like I have to. But I think it's okay to disagree with the founding fathers. I think there's some things that everybody would agree on, or most people would agree on, that they were wrong about. Slavery, for example. So natural rights, the philosopher it's most associated with it is John Locke, and as I already pointed out, where it kind of comes most to fruition is the Declaration of Independence, specifically life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which I think, as we established before, is pretty close to our definition. And I think proving the validity of this is contingent upon one's ability to prove or make a case for that specific God, an interventionist creator God that granted us these rights. Now, this theological argument, the classical Lockean argument, is not the only argument for natural rights. Somebody that I'm sure you're familiar with, Rothbard. Well, he offers up a say again.
Don't put me in that.
No. I knew you didn't like the Austrian school, but Rothbard tries to kind of rescue natural rights from these theological implications, and offers up a secular alternative. And I tried to find a quote here that kind of sums up what he said, or the case he was making. The nature of man is such that each individual person must, in order to act, choose his own ends and employ his own means in order to attain them. Possessing no automatic instincts, each man must learn about himself and the world, use his mind to select values, learn about cause and effect, and act purposely to maintain himself and advance his life. Since men can think, feel, evaluate, and act only as individuals, it becomes vitally necessary for each man's survival and prosperity that he be free to learn, choose, develop his facilities, and act upon his knowledge and values, that this is the necessary path of human nature. To interfere and cripple this process by using violence goes profoundly against what is necessary by man's nature for his life and prosperity. So that's kind of the secular case for natural rights. And I think that this has some problems too. In particular, that let me see here. In particular, possessing no automatic instincts. I think that we could point to a lot of places where man has automatic instincts, fight or flight, for example, being one. But implicit in this whole argument, I think, is is the notion of free will, which that onto itself I'm not quite sold on. So that's my 5 minutes.
Okay. All right. I'd like to thank you and everybody watching. It's a bit odd that I've already got some points against me in the voting, the voting counter. So I'm going to start off real quick. In a modern era where we have seen negative rights stripped from people continue to accumulate more power to the government, I, as the negative, believe to be true that there is a natural source of rights. To further clarify, I'll offer some definitions that we have already went over. Now, before moving on, let me clarify the burdens of this round. As the negative, I must only prove that the affirmative's resolution to be false. This debate is also not whether a God exists. Having said this, my value is natural rights theory. Now, my first contention is an eternal source of rights, God. My second contention is a secular source of rights from nature itself. That being said, I'm going to go on to some points that you made. This came to mind from the Congressional Declaration of All Rights from God. I can understand how that's a bit of an odd statement. It's not something even me as a Christian would make, purely because it doesn't necessarily have to be true, even if it is true. And you made a clear statement that it's a very specific God, that he's interventionist. But the statement could inversely be true that it's from a religion and not necessarily from a God. We're not directly talking about like a divine intervention into our rights and our place. That a God would grant us these rights, right? So kind of the idea of God granting us rights doesn't really pertain to Christian or Lockean theory. These are rights that are not granted to us. These are rights given unto the certainty of that we're alive, right? It's not you are human, therefore you have. It's you are human, therefore you have. I know it sounds a bit odd and to say it that way, but the commas there will make a difference. And yeah, I disagree with the founding fathers on quite a lot, actually. I definitely think they should have been less interventionist into the economy in the beginning. They should have done better with monetary policy in the beginning. The Continental was the worst piece of paper we ever had. Now, that being said, I want to expand on the contention of eternal sources of rights. And this kind of goes back to the modernism versus postmodernism, right? If we do not have rights that come from an eternal source, then we do not have rights at all. So if you're saying that there is no natural source of rights, and you were saying there are no rights at all, we're just having privileges granted to us by a government. And that I would contend is not true simply by the fact that we are conscious beings. And we elect our government to do things, which kind of goes into natural law theory from Thomas Aquinas. The next step I want to make is the secular argument for these rights. You made a statement about Murray Rothbard. I reject Murray Rothbard almost inherently. And that's specifically because he did that out of a blink of an eye to come up with that theory, because Austrians typically do disregard natural rights as a thing, which is why they're very consequentialist. They don't have any deontological set to them, and they're a priori and things of that nature. It's just not something that I agree with. Now, someone you should read, and someone who does a much better job of explaining natural law without the necessity of religion or God, is Grotius.
I'm sorry.
Is Hugo Grotius.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a towering figure in philosophy, political theory, and law. And one of his major works that he did was trying to bring natural law without religion, natural law and natural rights. And so what we have is the law of nature is a dictate of right reason, which points out that an act according as it is or is not in conformity with rational nature has in it a quality of moral baseness or a moral necessity, and that in consequence such an act is either forbidden or enjoined. Now to get back to the point. of moral relativism and things of that nature, because I think those are not interdependent of each other. They work together. So if we have a moral relativist argument for no rights and how rights are not from a natural resource, then we have no rights, and therefore there's nothing useful for us to have but to try to do our best to elect leaders that will maintain privileges to us, and that's something I reject. I'm almost out of time, so I'm going to pass it back to you. I'm going to give up my time, and I guess we can shoot for some questions before our closing statements.
Okay, you want to do questions then, and then closing statements?
Yeah, we still got 30 minutes.
Okay. All right, cool. So all right, so my first question to you, assuming that there is natural rights, is there any justification for curbing those rights?
I cannot think of a single justification for curbing a natural right off the top of my head. Do you have something more specific that you're aiming towards?
Well, when two natural rights come into conflict with one another,
Right.
So natural rights, specifically liberty, is very broad. So I think you're kind of invoking the harm principle. So you have the right to do anything as long as it doesn't harm someone else. Yeah.
I wouldn't say the word harm because that's a broad term. I would say you can't do anything that infringes on someone else's negative rights.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's and suppose those. So what I'm trying to get at is, these two rights coming into conflict with one another. I'll use the old fire in the crowded theater. And maybe that's probably not the best question, but sure.
Okay, so should someone's rights be suspended in the case that they yell fire?
I wouldn't say suspended, curbed, but limited.
So should we limit someone's ability to free speech because they might yell? Now, again, is it that they have done the act, or is that they may have the chance
that they've done the act? That they should face repercussions for the free exercise of those rights.
I'm actually going to say in that instance, no, because I find it such an odd statement when people make that, like somehow or another we're going to have this massive riot running out and people are going to be trampled to death and die and
it happened. That's literally a Supreme Court case that happened.
I understand the precedent, but I think it's driven way out of context when it comes to the actual debate itself, because if you do it in a normal theater on a normal day, you're probably not going to get the absolute reaction that you would get. And anyway, you are your own person. You choose to get up and run, right? How many times did the fire alarms go off in the barracks, and instead of getting up and running out knowing that there's a possibility of a fire, did people just roll over and go, I'm going to ignore that because it's absolutely stupid?
There's a strong possibility that it's going to be some fuckery going on the next day.
Exactly. So that's my point. You make a choice to go, oh my God, the place is on fire, and run someone over. I don't think that that's someone necessarily infringing on your rights, because it's something of a trivial matter if you choose it to make it so. I'm not going to get up and run like a bat out of hell if someone screams fire. Unless there's someone in there with fire beside me or someone with a gun actually taking action, I'm going to go sit there and go, okay, y'all run. I'm going to sit here. And I guess.
One more follow-up question, then I'll pass it back to you. Would you call it a justified choice for somebody to act that way? going back to the fire in a crowd theater analogy, the lights are low. People don't really know what's going on. Somebody walks in and in a very convincing manner says, "Fire! You need to get out now." Obviously, the choice still lies with you insofar that we have choice. But just talked about what a reasonable person would do. I think most people would, and I think this is shown empirically that it has happened often. That people do freak out. I think that kind of goes against our nature to assume that they wouldn't.
I get your point. But as for, do I find the claim justified, right? So that goes back to my definition of a right. So is that person justified in their statement of yelling fire? Possibly. There might be other reasons for that. There's some simple fallacies that might be able to, or not fallacies, some simple social psychology we could apply. This person may be yelling fire, maybe not for the specific reason of fire, but there may be other reasons that they are doing that. Any snap judgment as to why they did it is useless, because they might have a justification that we don't know of. If they have absolutely no justification and they are literally trying to cause chaos, I still don't think it's an infringement of freedom of speech, but I do think it will have to move into the social contract theory and state that this person is trying to cause a riot, which inciting a riot does not fall under freedom of speech. And I think that's where we could diverge from what would be a justified action of free speech versus someone.
So you agree that we do have an ability to kind of, this is just clarifying the first question. We do, there is, we could curb natural rights. We are justified in doing that somehow in some situations.
Okay. Again, based on my definition for what a right is, if there's no justified reason for the action, then I don't think it falls under as an obligated right. Freedom of speech definitely has to be unpacked a lot more than you're allowed to say anything. And that goes back to the precedent of the Supreme Court, but it also goes to the precedent of Christian theology, if we're going to use my second contention that there's an eternal source. Some religions would have you murdered for blaspheming against their God, right? And they believe in natural law. There's actually a lot of study and a lot of good work done in Islam about natural law and Sharia law for centuries.
I tried to look into it, and I didn't spend a lot of time on it, but I had some difficulty finding good sources or finding good arguments for natural law in Islam. But I'll pass pass the mic back to you if you want to pause the question here.
So you made the claim that, so you do not believe in free will. Let me posit that just to clarify.
Sure. Yeah. I don't. I do not believe in free will.
So you're purely deterministic.
I think that there is perhaps an illusion of free will. But yeah, I do. I am a determinist.
What justification do you have for determinism?
Sure. Well, I'm going to go back to the null hypothesis, right? And free will to me is where the burden lies. I think determinism's kind of the default. So if there's nothing external there, then we could predict it, right? If there's no other source besides what's apparent, the stimuli that we receive, we could calculate it. Every action given a powerful computer. So free will, we haven't discovered it. We haven't discovered its source. And then I look at all the ways that, even especially the free part, all the way that that human consciousness can be influenced. And it seems a bridge too far for me.
Okay. But do you think that's a strong enough validation of a critique to say that free will does not exist?
No, I mean, I withhold the possibility that it could exist.
Right. Because for something to be purely deterministic, there would have to be a driving force behind the determinism, right? We would have to say, if we can calculate all of your atoms and all of your cells and all of these things, then we could determine your life path all the way through.
So are you asking me what set it all in motion?
Well, no. I'm just talking about in general.
First cause?
For there to be the determinism, there has to be a driving action for determinism, right? You can't just say that we are completely deterministic without there being a driving force. So you're saying that?
Yeah, and I don't know what that is. You know, I mean, I could point to the Big Bang. You know, at what first set matter in motion.
Right. So that's my point.
It all falls place from there.
So if you don't have enough justification for free will based on the idea that we haven't found it, you cannot have the same level of justification for determinism because it has no more foundational.
Yeah, no, I think we have some pretty good guesses. As I've already pointed out, you know, I'd point to the Big Bang, or you know, I'd even withhold, you know, some sort of non-interventionist first cause, creator, function of the universe, God, whatever label you want to slap onto it. And you know, I understand that necessarily hasn't been proven either.
Right. I'm not specifically trying to drive home the idea for a cosmological argument, because I'm not. You can't say the Big Bang 18 billion or however many billion years, depending on who you ask, will have a determinate factor towards the projection of me as an individual billions of years later. I mean, especially in the face of quantum consciousness and these areas, that just doesn't make sense. But that's I think I've drove that point home enough. So I'm gonna drive home another point. What about the case for the natural law and the natural rights argument that I gave from the secular perspective? Again, I'm not going to drive home so much as the eternal source of rights is God, because you're obviously just going to disagree with the point of there being a God, which that's fine. But when he stated the rationale of humanity, right? We all are rational actors. We all can understand game theory for the most part, that two rational actors are in a game are always going to make the best choice for themselves, right? We can all kind of agree to that. Would that not be enough for there to be natural rights?
So you're stating that because an individual always acts in their own self-interest, that is the source of natural rights?
No, I'm saying we can always act in a rational manner outside of some outliers, which we'll kind of dismiss because they're not a big enough part of the population to really throw natural law out of order. We've come to the conclusion of natural law through rationality. If that rationale is there, therefore, we can assume that natural law is there because we have all reached this rationale.
So I'm still kind of not grasping your argument. You're saying that that rationalism. So what gives us natural rights is the fact that we've thought of natural rights.
Okay. Well, yeah. So for atheists, there is still the belief that humans have reasoning ability, and with it, the laws of nature are discernible. For atheists who accept this approach, to act in keeping with the laws of nature is the morally correct thing to do. When the law of nature provides guidance for human action, these would include the law of survival, the natural action of living things to maintain themselves and to reproduce. Does that explain it a little bit better?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I get what you're saying. Um, and again, you put forth the assertion that I don't believe that there is rights, that they're just privileges. I offered up my own definition of rights. And I do think that, yeah, there's some things that are inherently necessary for for humans to prosper, but the source of those rights is ultimately human constructs. The source of those rights is government, and I would actually say force of arms, because to me that ultimately is where government derives its power. I think social contract theory in general has some consent problems, but I digress. So yeah, there is some things that we have a pretty good guess on, them being necessary for us to survive, for us to thrive as a race, but that stems from human construction, human constructs, right? And there's many places where I would say natural rights don't exist. Totalitarian regimes, for example. If natural rights are inherent to humanity, even somebody in North Korea would have those rights. And if you don't have the ability to exercise that right, how can you say it exists? That wasn't a question. That was rhetorical.
I understand that. So I'm just going to point out something here. There's a bit of a contradiction of terms on you state that there is no natural source of rights, but then you go to the point that it's a human construct, it's enforced through arms, and that it's from the government. Really, this gets down to how you feel about human nature. I find human nature as to be as a part of nature, right? So it's a natural source of rights, if it is even a human construct. So that's the point I was driving home with secular arguments. Since we believe these things to be true, therefore they are true. And when it comes to the exercise of rights, I get what you're saying. But the problem lies that something can be inherent, but it can still be stopped. My identity, I think this is the best argument for it. So my identity, right? Who I am. There's no changing. There's no exogenous force that really can change me who I am, right? We can say that some cult level behaviors and things of that nature can warp me, but at my bottommost identity, I am me. No exogenous force can change that. Do you agree with that statement?
No.
So you don't believe that you believe that every human is malleable from their identity?
So I might be confusing your definition of identity, but say, for example, you had a major brain injury. I think that would absolutely change your identity.
Okay. I was speaking more about a social level, but yeah, I mean, if I got punched in the head and I lost, my medulla oblongata, that's not actually something that would affect it. But my frontal lobe, if
Right.
I just the Waterboy reference. But yeah, if I lost my frontal lobe, sure it would change some of my actions, but it wouldn't change who I am. And they've proven that because your frontal lobe just kind of is that barrier between you doing things rather than what's in your mind already. We already have the conscious and unconscious actions. Taking that frontal lobe out will just make those conscious thoughts turn into actions, and those unconscious thoughts move and progress more. So I think that's not really a great argument here. But so if we know that my identity can't be changed, right? If I went to North Korea and I lived in North Korea for the next 30 years, who I am is still who I am. No outside force can change that. Now, it may suppress who I am, but it cannot stop me from being that person. Now, this argument is something that the gay community has made, right? I was born this way.
Mm-hmm.
I can act not in my manner, but that doesn't stop me from being in my manner, right?
So I think more their argument is that it's a biological construct.
There's no reason.
Maybe we're getting back to free will versus determinism.
Right. That's the point I'm driving home, is that you can't stop my identity. My identity will always be my identity,
Mm-hmm.
right? So those rights that they have, they can be suppressed, but they are still there, no matter what. If this person's born gay, they do not have to act in that manner, and a government can suppress them. However, that does not stop them from being gay. And you can take that exact same argument and apply it to rights. Just because you do not get to act out in rights does not mean that they are not there.
Mm-hmm. So you don't think that brainwashing, for example, or some other really, really extreme, sort of form of manipulation has any validity to it?
Based on psychology, not too much. No. A lot of psychologists, psychoanalysts point towards Jordan Peterson. He's rapidly becoming one of the most famous psychologists around. He would reject that notion, because you are who you are. You're either for the most part malevolent or benevolent. I mean, that's just a fact of life. Some people are born without a care in the world. Famous quote from Batman. Some men just want to watch the world burn, but that does not impede the idea, the head of the point I was making.
All right. So, a question for you. Getting back to an earlier line of reasoning. Would you call my computer monitor natural?
Yeah, why not?
So all things are natural.
You would have to make that statement. Yes, all things are natural. What is unnatural? That's a better. The inverse is what.
Yeah, sure. What is unnatural? And I something created by humans, something processed by humans, altered by humans, and I wouldn't even say humans. I'd probably extend that to other animals. I know it's kind of goes against the normative sense of the word, but a beaver dam is unnatural. It wasn't created through erosion or geological formation. It was created by a beaver.
Right, but a beaver is a part of nature, and its place in nature is to make a dam. I mean,
yeah,
it's a part of it's you could say it's a part of a circle of life to pull from Lion King. It's something that happens.
Yeah, so I think what you may be trying to claim, which is original, I actually haven't thought of it, is if all things are in fact nature, and if rights do exist, therefore natural rights exist. And it wasn't quite what I was trying to argue against, but I get it. I get that line of reasoning. It's clever.
Right, exactly. Now, again, I could go back and make the argument for an eternal source of rights, and really that would be my go-to argument in most places. But I'm really basing this off of the topic and topicality, and that's why I went that route. But there is the eternal source of rights. And if we want to talk about that, I'm more than welcome to talk about the eternal source of rights, because like I said, there's no reason to assume that God grants us rights. They are inherent in God creating us. And therefore, if we take the presupposition that there's a possibility for a God in all earths, that there's a possibility of a God on this earth. And if we take all those presuppositions and add them up together, we're pretty sure there's an eternal source of rights. There's an eternal source of morality that is outside of our universe, that can make our rights and our morality justified through its being.
So I think you might be invoking an argument that maybe one or two of these viewers that I recruited might be familiar with. The modal ontological argument for God or a
Yes.
God. Mm-hmm. So let me pull that up real quick. So I have the right. What I'm talking about is actually what it is. So you're talking about the classic modal ontological argument.
Yes. Yes. Premise one: it is possible that God exists. If it is possible that God exists, then God exists in some possible worlds. God exists in some possible worlds, and God exists in all possible worlds. If God exists in all possible worlds, and God exists in the actual world, if God exists in the actual world, then God exists. Therefore, God exists. Yes, modal logic.
Mm-hmm.
The ontological argument.
Yeah, and I'm actually not even gonna try to argue against that. I'm gonna point to what I referenced before. It's not necessarily about a God. I still have to draw the connection for me. The type of God, right?
Right. And
so a God could exist. A God could exist that quite frankly doesn't give a damn about us.
Right.
And
well, no argument for God is no argument for the Judeo-Christian God can stand by itself without the simple fact of Jesus Christ, right? So what we know of Jesus Christ, that Jesus Christ is a true being. We do agree historically that Jesus Christ exists. There are some people who disagree with that, but there are also people who disagree that concentrations happened in Nazi Germany. So, I mean, of course, we're going to find people who disagree with that.
No, I get that, and I would say that I'm in the former camp.
Yes, Jesus at some point did walk the earth. We know this to be true. There's historical references. Now, if we agree with those historical references, we know that Jesus was resurrected from the dead. Now, if we take that statement as true, again, this is from a historical reference. I don't whether or not it isn't true as an absolute is not up to me. But we have historical references to say that it did happen. That is how you tie all of the arguments of God together, as in there is an interventionist God, and that interventionist God is Yahweh.
And what makes your historical references for your God better than other historical references for other gods?
For one,
just the body of evidence, the preponderance of evidence.
I guess you could say the body of evidence, and what you say for Jesus as true, you could also say for Buddha. There's actually a lot of parity between Buddha and Jesus that a lot of people don't realize, and something I think Christians should embrace a lot more, that really Buddha was the Eastern Jesus Christ. But we're really out of time. We have 2 minutes left. I would love to continue this conversation about God, but I just want to go back and make a quick view of my argument. So we gave the definitions, and we've made some strong arguments. My argument surrounded around my second contention of a secular source of rights from nature itself, and that nature is everything. Therefore, if we have some type of right from nature, we have natural rights.
Yeah, no, that was as you said, it was topical. It was good, and I actually wrestled around with this question, and in hindsight, I wasn't quite happy how I phrased it. I think that what I was actually trying to argue against, I could have been more specific. So I'll take that one. I'll take that one on the chin. So here's my idea, and I love this app, and I try to encourage other people to get into it, because I think it's a pretty cool thing, and I think it serves a pretty good purpose. I look at people that just like Facebook rant at each other, and I imagine that if they did something like this, it would be more productive for both parties. So I do try to encourage people to do that. So this is my idea going forward. Debate Olympics. Is it going to end? Is it just going to end? or can we keep talking?
Love you. Bye.